Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today's guest is Chris Hood, a speaker, strategist, award-winning author who is transforming the way businesses think about customer experience. With over 35 years of experience across business development, digital strategy, and customer success, Chris has made a name for himself helping brands evolve and stay relevant in a fast-changing digital world. He spent years at Google leading digital strategy and has pioneered storytelling and technology innovation at entertainment giants like Fox, Disney, and Universal. In 2025, he's been named one of the top 30 customer experience gurus in the world by Global Gurus for the second year in a row. His mission? To help businesses create more meaningful customer-centric strategies that drive real results. Chris, this is one of my favorite topics. Welcome to the conversation. I'm so glad you're here.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to this.
This is fun. And saying global gurus is easy for some people, but not for me. That was a mouthful. Let's talk about what you're doing and why it's important today for businesses.
Yeah, if we look around us, I think the biggest term that everybody is talking about is artificial intelligence. And when I think about consumer experiences, I actually think about it from a human to human point of view. And so more critically, I think now than ever before, as we start to remove the human connection in our engagements, and that's not just from a customer experience perspective. Like you and I are sitting here on a podcast talking with each other. Even those conversations are starting to dwindle away. And so I think it's really critical for us to take a small step back and reflect on why human connections, why personal conversations, why storytelling, all of these things are critical, and how businesses are going to be impacted by changing or shifting away from that. And again, more critical probably now than ever before.
And it is because we are at an inflection point with AI. Everybody is being touched by it in some way, shape, or form now. And for the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, it does distance the human to human interaction. And there are key moments that matter in every experience that need to be human to human. And as you're looking at how AI is coming into play and how businesses are starting to understand and know if we leverage AI well, we can do more faster, it will cost less, all of the things that businesses always love to get excited about with technology. But we've learned over time with other things that when we remove and distance human from human interaction, it's not always great. So what's some of your thinking right now on customer experience and journey and understanding how and when to leverage AI as a strategic advantage?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that I think I'm being asked a lot, recently. And the best way to kind of explain this is to look at two different examples. And one of those examples is Discover. So Discover Card, Discover Bank, and over the Super Bowl and even before that, they made a mission and started to really strategically think about how they can create a differentiation in the marketplace. And so a lot of their commercials are, well, you can call us and talk to a real human person.
Yeah.
You sound like a robot. These robots are becoming more like they're actually making fun of that.
Yeah.
And so you saw a really strong increase in their profitability because you had people shifting from banks that did not allow you to speak to a human to Discover, where you could clearly call and actually get to somebody to have a question answered. And so that differentiation, I think, is a critical lesson for us to look at. And it shows that people are moving towards companies that keep that and maintain that relationship. Now, if we look at a completely separate example, which would be, for anybody who connoisseurs, fast food restaurants out there, Taco Bell has done an immense amount of work in completely removing the human experience. If you go through a drive-through, you have an AI assistant asking and taking your order. If you go into the restaurant, there are kiosks and terminals where you sit there and input your order. And they've reduced the amount of people that are working within their facilities while at the same time increasing the rates of their menu items. So all of those things you just mentioned that companies like, wow, we can reduce our expenses, we can increase our costs, and we don't have to actually talk with anybody in the process. Well, what you're actually seeing is people are leaving Taco Bell and going to competitor fast food chains where that human connection is still in existence. So even if you look at companies like Chick-fil-A or out here in California, In-N-Out, that is completely a human experience. There is no technology that is between the ordering process or the experience itself. Those restaurants are increasing in value. And so both of these lessons demonstrate that the consumer broadly is rejecting the requirement to leverage AI in the experience. And more so, the companies that are providing at least at minimum an option. I equate it to if you go to like a grocery store and you have the choice of going through and checking out, self checkout, or going and actually working with somebody, to assist you in that checkout. You have the option. And in a lot of cases, when companies are providing that option for the experience, they are seeing a better return than if you are forcing the AI upon your customer.
And that's a really critical point, right? Choice. There will obviously become a time where there is a space in the experience for AI to help. And from my perspective, I love to talk about it as any technology as an enablement tool. So a scenario I like to play with is triage at a doctor's office, right? Having an AI agent in there that is listening to symptoms and starting to do the research so that as you actually go through your interaction from intake to seeing a doctor at an urgent care, right? Information is being gathered and can be provided so that first interaction with a doctor, it's actually an informed conversation because there's information that the AI has already curated to help guide the interaction, which for me creates a richer experience with a healthcare professional because we're actually talking about what's happening. So as an enablement tool, I love the idea, but the replacement factor has to be a choice. And there will become a time when that choice might be preferable.
I'll touch on a couple things real quickly here. So one of the things that is interesting is that in most of the products that we have been using for the last 10 years, AI has been present, right? You have been using AI. Actually, there's a stat that's out there. I think it was, I can't remember who conducted the research. I have it on LinkedIn. But anyway, about 99% of Americans, this is the stat, 99% of Americans have used AI in the last week. And that's not including things like ChatGPT or Gemini for search and things like that. You are using AI in Gmail and your weather apps and your mobile phones, on Netflix, Starbucks. If you've ever gone to Starbucks, you've used AI. Like AI has been with us and has been used for over 10 years, 15 years. Now, what consumers are looking for is they're looking for the value proposition. When I go to Netflix, I want to get a recommendation. I want that recommendation to be relevant for what I'm looking for. And that's what they care. As soon as you tap on like powered by AI, it's actually turning people off. Now, what's interesting in terms of the case study or the example you gave, like triage, I think there are some interesting examples where, yes, if there is a way to triage or a way to kind of get a head start on whatever the support is that I need, it would be fabulous. However, we're also seeing where systems are having an AI chatbot that is sitting there and saying, well, answer all these questions for me so I can help get you started. And then the handoff between the tool and the real person doesn't happen. How many times have you called a customer support? You've explained everything and they said, oh, let us hand you over to somebody else. And they ask you all the exact same questions, right? Like, well, at what point in time do we get the integration
Yeah.
between these tools so that if you are trying to triage, that it's at least not repetitive. It's a, consistent motion, and that is still a big challenge for a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. And obviously, what I was describing was a euphoric best case. We figured out all of the nuances of it. But in that customer journey, in the experience, right, those critical touch points, moments that matter, whatever lexicon we want to use, those will always define whether or not the experience is positive or negative to the consumer, customer, patient, client, whatever context that we're talking about. Those are the places where we actually should be focusing our attention. It's not the AI, it's how it's helping solve for fill in the blank.
Yes, absolutely.
And as a, a thought leader in the space of customer experience and customer journey, right? Our expectations as consumers have changed. We are less patient. We want things faster. We want our Netflix recommendations to be relevant. We want the Amazon, I think you might like this, to actually be talking about something I might buy and not, I don't know, diapers, which are totally irrelevant in my life, but every now and then pop up as a recommended purchase. Things I don't want to know why. I'll throw that piece out also. I don't want to know the answer to why I get those. But for years and years and years, we've relied on the idea of customer journey mapping, that we're going to curate an experience. And I think that it's really hard to curate and drive behavior. Where are we headed in this space?
Yeah, I don't know if you've read my blog at all, but this is a topic that I talk about a lot. And at a very high level, I argue that the traditional sense of customer journey mapping is dead. It makes no sense anymore, or at least at minimum, you're doing it wrong. And that is because we no longer live in any type of linear motion. We are consistently multidimensional by nature. And so, what does that mean? Like, let's take a scenario. I go to the grocery store, I'm shopping for dinner for the evening, or maybe I'm shopping for the groceries for the week.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, as I'm walking up and down the aisle, I'm looking at Wonder White bread and realize, oh, shoot, I just forgot to pay my Visa bill and it was due yesterday. And so I get out my phone, I log into Visa as I'm mindlessly now walking up and down the aisle. I pay
Mhm.
my Visa bill and I realized that, oh, I've got to move money to the account. Oh, because, oh, wait, I got to pay for groceries. Oh, I'm back in the grocery store, right? Like these are our natural thought process, right?
Yes.
We are not sitting there like robots going down an aisle and like pulling things off the shelf strategically without thinking about other things going on in our lives. And so as a result, if you are not also strategically thinking about how those consumers within your store or through your business are actually engaging with outside external components, that's what you're missing because it's happening. It's happening before they engage with you and after they engage with you and
Yeah.
during when they are engaging with you. And I think one of the biggest challenges for a lot of organizations is they think about a journey map as the moment they start to engage with you to the moment they either purchase or leave. And it's not as simple as that. It is no longer linear. And we're also getting into other types of multisensory, right?
Yeah.
A journey map typically is talking about touch points. We don't have to touch anything anymore.
Yeah.
The term touch points is even becoming outdated. I can use my voice to, talk to my Google Home Assistant to actually ask, some type of information to create my shopping list for me.
Mhm.
So all of these different things that are happening before, during, and after the journey, the companies that can get into that and recognize that and cater to that, and that also might mean because another typical scenario is I'm in the grocery store and I'm looking at Wonder Bread and it's $4.99 and maybe my thought is, well, my gosh, over at Walmart it's $3.99. I'll save that for my next. You're thinking about the competition in real time within those spaces. And so if you can figure out a way to engage and interact between your brand and even your competitors, you are going to create a more realistic journey map. And that is, again, this is hugely missing from most organizations today.
And I wholeheartedly agree that the first piece that's the most important miss is the before and the after. Right? We are so myopically focused on what we do, what we sell, how we do it, that we forget that there's breadth and depth to what the customer, the consumer is going through before they even make any sort of a purchasing decision. So I absolutely agree that until we're thinking before and after and outside of our sphere of influence, we're totally missing what our customers need. And in that case, right, failing. And I appreciate that, right? The journey is not linear. We aren't robots. And I've done the work for years where you try to make the sequential things happen. And now we have our little smiley faces and we have our happy customers. And it's never quite right because of everything that you described in the grocery store scenario. We are multitasking in our brains constantly. And right, that person in the grocery store doing all of those things probably walked out of the store missing 3 of the key items on their grocery list because they were doing all of the other things. So how do we help make that a more effective experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a couple of different scenarios. So we'll stick with the grocery store, and one of my favorite pastimes is the movie theater.
Mhm.
Now, again, if we were to map out a traditional journey map for a movie theater, you're thinking about, consumer buys tickets, goes to the movies, goes to concession stands, get into their seats. Sometimes people will get into their seats, then go to the concession
Mhm.
stand, watch the movie, leave the theater, be happy or sad or whatever feeling from whatever movie they watched. That's it. That's it. But if you're like me, I'm like planning dinner reservations, probably thinking about babysitter, going
Mhm.
to the grocery store, picking up candy that I can smuggle into the theater, figuring out what clothes I'm going to wear so that they can hide this said candy in my, jacket pockets. Like, and then once I've seen the movie, I leave and I'm thinking about, well, man, that was good. I'm going to post about it on social media. I'm going to share with my friends. I might go back and see it again. Who can I invite? And I'm starting that process over again. Now, imagine if a theater could actually figure out who the local grocery stores were, how much candy was being bought at that local grocery store, and have some sort of couponing or recognition system that, yeah, we don't really care if you buy the candy here at our theater, but if you're buying it externally, here's a coupon to come into the theater, and
Yeah.
here's a rewards program that's part of it in some way, right? Like the technology to accomplish that is readily available to us. Why
Mhm.
does it have to be about sneaking the candy in and that entire experience that's siloed out? Now, all of the theaters know that this is happening, but they're not doing anything to bake that into a traditional journey map. And
Yeah.
that's the whole point of how do we manage this kind of what's happening before and
Mhm.
introduce that as a character profile or some sort of element that we could then potentially benefit from within our map. And then, of course, whatever's happening afterwards to try to reprocess that back into the theater.
And that's a fabulous scenario, and one I think that everybody can kind of attach to, because there's also, right, that illicit thrill of sneaking the stuff in. I might take it so far as, there's other forms of contraband that have over the years been smuggled into theaters.
Yeah. Oh, my mom will pop an entire bag of popcorn and put it in her purse. So yeah.
That's audacious because you can smell that coming. I love it. I love a good rebel. With the work that you've done over the past 35 years, with what you're building and growing today, what's one story of something that was a customer experience that you were working on that went south? It just didn't work.
Not many.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because one, I probably just don't think about them that often. If I'm sure they're out there, right? I think a lot of times it's not necessarily the experience or the project or the program or whatever,
Yeah.
didn't work. I think more or less it's a change in direction. we might have had a particular strategy, and then we've decided, we're going to cancel that project, and so it all falls through. I would say that more likely than anything is you run a project, and even if it lasts 2 days, and if it doesn't work, you just eject it and move on to the next thing, right? I think that's the other challenge for a lot of companies is they spend a lot of time in developing the one be all customer experience. And customer experience is a daily thing, right? An hourly thing, a moment by moment thing. I think you mentioned moments. Like, I'm a firm believer that if you can adapt in the moment to be relevant in that moment, again, going back to the grocery store, I'm walking through the grocery aisle and I realize I have to pay a Visa bill. How can I tap into that moment? And so for me, it's not necessarily about failures. I'm sure there's been a lot of things that have failed or have not lasted as long as I would have liked to. But there's also equally just as many that, we've planned out for maybe a day or 2 days, and then it keeps going, going, going. And you're like, wow, man, this lasted for 3 weeks. This is great. But no matter what it is, customer experience isn't stagnant, right? It's not the same. It's not a project. It's not one thing that you build and then you have success metrics around it. And that might be contradictory to a lot of people. They're looking at success metrics like analytics, like, are we getting traction, or how many people are clicking on this? Sure, you can do that, but really your success metrics for customer experience is how many sales did you make this week, and did it drive actual awareness and traffic and success to your customer base? Did you increase the smiley faces that you're talking about in some way? If you've done that, then you move on to the next thing, because even if that was successful, hugely successful, next week you've got to change it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely fabulous point. And I do appreciate the perspective, right? And I talk about it with my clients. We experiment a lot, and we will invest and we will try and we will do things. And the moment we know that we're not getting the results that we're looking for, stop, kick it to the curb, and do the next thing.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily about failure, but it is about adjusting and moving towards the desired outcomes. And as soon as you get the indicator it's not working, what's next? Chris, we've had a fabulous conversation. If the audience is interested in learning more, how do they find you and more about what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest way is to track me down on my website, chrishood.com, CHRISHOOD.com. And there you can find my social media profiles. Feel free to reach out, connect with me. You can find my podcast, my blogs, my books. Everything is right there, all at chrishood.com.
Absolutely fabulous. That will, of course, be in the show notes, so it's easy for listeners to find. Chris, today, thank you for taking us on the journey and talking through the connection between artificial intelligence and how that's going to connect into customer experience. We talked a little bit about how Discover Card is leaning into human to human, and Taco Bell is saying, hey, we're going to try and do it with the least amount of human interaction as we can, and two very different results that both of those companies are experiencing. We had a fabulous look at the idea of coming up and learning from what works and what doesn't, finding that moment when it is okay to say, let it go and move forward with the next thing. Because what is important to remember is experience is ongoing, and moment to moment it's going to change, and what works today may not work tomorrow. And so it's always being attuned to how it's driving the sales and the results that you're looking for, and making the corrections along the way. Chris, I appreciated your time in the conversation, and audience, you know my rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.